And anybody who would go up there wouldn't have to worry about any of that. And that's how normal people are. They trust one another. And they don't think about stuff like, where will I be using the bathroom on my wedding night? Because that's just a given for the civilized world. For the world of real people. That's something that you don't need to worry about. And when I started thinking about that, I started looking at the whole facility very critically. And Cobb Hill Estate is a big, giant pile of shit. So it doesn't surprise me that their logo resembles a pile of shit too. This is their logo for the Cobb Hill Estates. It's supposed to symbolize their little occult rock piles that they call cairns. But it resembles to me something else. So when you look at this place, the people up there never heard of any landscaping. These are people that seem to go out of their way not to do anything to improve that property. Look at all the weeds in this area. In fact, these are some weeds that they show in their videos about how beautiful the landscape is. These are weeds. Look at this outdoor church. It's a weed pit. In fact, one of the big photo opportunities is their old decomposing fence. They have dozens of photographs of the wedding party and the bride and groom standing in front of this old decrepit fence. A real establishment that takes itself serious and takes the people staying there serious would have stuff like gazebos and patios and gardens and stonework and elevated points of land where you could see the mountain landscape a little bit better. They would have lookout points. In fact, look at their fire pit, which is also advertised as something you do after the wedding. And I'm not saying all this to split hairs. I'm saying all this so people will begin to understand that this place, their focus, isn't receiving people on their wedding nights to make this a very special occasion for the people. This is run by a bunch of very hateful people that could care less that you're getting married and quite possibly be more interested in introducing you to their neighbors whose campsite you could find a little ways down the hill, when the couple may or may not decide to evacuate that area, quite possibly because they can't find anything to drink, or they find it very uncomfortable out there in the darkness on the top of this mountain in the middle of the night, quite possibly with the proprietor of the joint missing or refusing to answer the door. So I can just imagine what may happen. So the couple has taken a carriage ride at some point up to the top of this mountainside. That is my guess, due to the fact that they have carriage house signs all over the property. They don't have a video that I could find on the internet, but they definitely have a lot of carriage house signs around, and it is on a farm. So I'm taking the liberty to guess that is one of the features that will attract people to their location. Taking this nice stagecoach ride up the side of this beautiful mountain and get married at the top of this mountain location. So if they start looking for their car, where's their car? Like many people who get married, they have people who are paid to manage such affairs. Maybe they left their car at the bottom of the hill to take the carriage ride. Maybe people who are in charge of the establishment were in charge of moving the different cars around to accommodate all the guests. So quite possibly they cannot find their car, or their car is parked at the bottom of the hill. And quite possibly the bride and groom decide that they want to leave the area because they're getting terrible feelings. They don't want to stay there, and their idea is they want to go somewhere real. Go somewhere where they can get into a hot tub, or take a shower, or drink a Sprite. So I can imagine the bride and groom walking down the side of this mountain. And I think they say it's 1.3 miles on one of their signs. It's about a mile. And once you get toward the bottom, once you get near the main road, I see that there's all these weird ritualistic objects left along the roadside. And this includes a little tiny baby deer with a sledgehammer kind of looming over its head, and a devil mask. And of course, in this upscale area of Cobb Hill Estates, there's this campground where it appears people are setting trees on fire, having giant bonfires, and having target practice. They even have pallets with a bunch of brush stacked on top, ready for a quick bonfire. This is an odd sight for the upscale and prestigious area of Harrisville Village. This is an expensive lake community, and it's okay for some idiot to have a campground where they set trees on fire, have huge bonfires, and then have target practice. It just looks a little out of place to me, especially with all these ritualistic, weird objects leading into this place. So imagine you get married, you wake up in the state I described, you want to leave that area, you and your wife are walking down the hill, and then you run into a bunch of these people who have a camp, where they're shooting off guns and lighting huge bonfires. And if you look at the other videos on this channel, I think you can understand what this is all about, and who may get off on stuff like this. What rich establishment sickos get off on, at the expense of young couples that think it'll be fun to take a carriage ride up to the top of a mountain and get married in the open air. The last thing I want to mention about this investigation here is that at that campsite at the end, there appears to be like blood splattered around that area, especially on the rocks in front of that makeshift target thing. So I spoke about this a while ago on a video entitled Investigations Training Video, and I called it Red Rocks. And around Marlboro, I saw some rocks that had like red stains on it, and if you try to taste it, it will even taste kind of like blood. And so I looked it up on the internet, and the best I could do was identify it as hematite. And the definition of hematite is a reddish black mineral consisting of ferric oxide. It is an important ore of iron. So as you know, a lot of iron is in your blood. So I found this on all sorts of rocks in the area. So I began to realize that it's so frequent in this area that it is not blood on the rock. It is hematite or iron. So that may be why they call it Blood Hill, is because there's so many rocks up there that are red. And some of this stuff stands out more as looking like blood. So that may be the reason why they call it Blood Hill. Now what is odd though is that around that area where they're shooting at, there's a bunch of piles of ash. So it seems like they like shooting in that direction and then having bonfires at that place. So that is just creepy all the way through. To have target practice at something, then have to light the area on fire. You will also notice a nearby tree is covered with black, burnt bark. The whole area of the tree is discolored, and the bark is peeling away at the bottom, and that all suggests that the tree's been lit on fire. And then they have a pallet with some brush stacked on top that suggests a real quick makeshift fire. And they also have some spray paint cans that they may or may not be shooting at. Now they could be putting a bucket of spray paint cans there, and these red rocks that have this hematite mineral in there as a way to cover their ass. So the red and brown stain on that target that they're shooting at, it looks a little bit like paint. So it could be they're shooting at spray paint cans and then leaving some of those rocks around that have hematite in there as a way to cover their ass. They also have a chair kind of positioned in a lookout manner. Then there's a little trail that leads to a back clearing, and they have a large fire pit that they've made with rock, and it's a pretty large fire pit. The rest of the area looks kind of disheveled. They have their belongings just left outside, including what looks like a pressure cooker. They just leave that outside. They have some piles of garbage, and then they have this shed, this open shed here, that they don't bother to cover either. So it doesn't look like a traditional campsite where good people might go to camp. It looks like a hellhole where they're having giant bonfires. And then they have the little target range that they're also setting on fire. Meanwhile, if they are shooting anything illegal, They could be covering up that crime by lighting whatever they're shooting at on fire and then transferring the ash out of there with a truck. Now nearby there is a red truck and a bed to another truck. So if you look in the dump, in the truck bed on the left, you'll see what looks like ash along top of it.